Welcome back to the deep dive. We have an absolutely massive stack of sources on the table today, uh, pulling from the official league rulebooks, and
Some newly leaked confidential team strategy documents, which is
it
huge.
is, plus the raw telemetry and play-by-play logs from Game 6 of the Manaheim Academy Manaball season.
Yeah, it's a really dense stack, too. We are looking at everything from, granular player tracking
Talk about the
statistics.
vertical displacement rates.
Exactly. From that, all the way up to the high-level tactical identities that completely define how these two franchises operate.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to step right back into the broadcast booth, at least conceptually. We're breaking down an absolute epic of a matchup.
Oh, man, epic is the right word.
We're going to call the pivotal plays straight from the logs, analyze the wild momentum swings using the raw data, and dissect the underlying strategy of what turned out to be an arena-shaking upset between the Crimson Tigers and the Golden Eagles.
And for anyone who follows the league, you already know the stakes of this game. But looking at these leaked strategy documents, this matchup is essentially a masterclass in asymmetrical tactical warfare.
Right.
It's the perfect forensic case study in how speed, spatial improvisation, and lightning-fast vertical transitions can completely dismantle an overwhelming, aggressively structured opponent.
Anyone tuning in already knows that Manaball is basically four-dimensional chess played at breakneck speed. We don't need to rehash the dimensions of the dome or how the mana boots work.
Right. You guys know the basics.
You know the upper layer, the neutral plane, and the lower layer. You know how the dome's magical gravity pulls everything toward that central neutral plane?
Yeah, but what we do need to look at is how these two specific teams weaponize that verticality. Let's look at the Crimson Tigers first.
The home team.
Right, the home team,
Mhm.
heavily favored. And looking at their internal playbook, their entire identity revolves around a concept they call total spatial control.
The Tigers are, well, they're frankly terrifying on paper. They run a hyper-aggressive 3-2-1 formation. What really stands out in their logs is how they deploy three centers simultaneously into the neutral plane.
The Crimson Collapse.
Exactly, the Crimson Collapse.
It is a suffocating system. By jamming three centers into that middle layer, they mathematically dominate possession. They just dictate the tempo.
But the data shows a glaring vulnerability there, doesn't it?
It does. By committing three centers to the neutral plane, the Tigers mathematically surrender about 60% of the upper layer airspace.
Wow.
They rely entirely on their star strikers, Autumn Fallon and Ty Clyde, to finish plays quickly, while Commander Liz Hadbucks orchestrates all the chaos from the middle.
And they back it all up with Devin Grazzo, a Guardian who plays incredibly high up in the defensive zone.
Right, very aggressive goaltending.
So stepping into their territory for Game 6 were the Golden Eagles. Looking at the Eagles' playbook, their identity is the polar opposite. They don't want to control the board, they want to break it.
Yeah, they run a chaotic, hyper-fast 3-2 offensive structure.
They practically live in the upper layer, relying heavily on those steep gravity descent angles for dive shots.
They are undeniably the fastest team in the league. Their confidential strategy documents actually show they completely abandon traditional positional defense.
Which is wild to read.
It really is. They don't run a zone. They don't even run a strict man-to-man. They just rely on raw recovery speed. They're led by strikers Addie Lum and Mac Blackwood, with Blake Anderson isolated as the Guardian.
It's just a brilliant tactical clash. The Tigers want to put you in a vice grip of structured pressure, and the Eagles want to outrun you in a track meet.
So the question going into Game 6 was simple. Could the Eagles survive the relentless onslaught of that 3-2-1 formation long enough to find the gaps the Tigers leave behind?
Let's pull up the logs for Period 1 and find out. Reading through the play-by-play, the tension in that dome was just palpable. The orb drops, and the Tigers execute their game plan flawlessly.
They don't waste a single second feeling out the opponent. They initiate the Crimson Collapse immediately.
Reading the log for the opening drive, it plays out like a highlight reel. Center Sydney Distansk intercepts a sloppy clear right in the neutral plane. She doesn't hold the orb. She instantly launches a high-arsing lift pass into the upper layer.
And Fallon is already there?
Striker Autumn Fallon is already at maximum elevation. Fallon dives downward, using the gravity pull to accelerate, and thunders a vicious spike shot past Anderson.
The telemetry clocks that shot at 84 miles per hour.
It's 1-0 Tigers before the crowd even settles into their seats.
What's fascinating here is the Eagles' complete lack of panic. If you look at the biometric data we have from the wearables, their heart rates barely spike.
Really?
Yeah. Most teams would crumble or at least pull back into a defensive shell after giving up a goal that violent that early.
So how do they respond so calmly? Is it just hubris, or is it structural?
Oh, it's entirely structural. They instantly utilize their transition speed. They recognize that the Tiger's hyper-aggressive forecheck, and remember, a forecheck in Manaball isn't just pressing the floor, it's aggressively pushing the vertical boundary of the offensive zone.
Right, pushing up.
Exactly. That leaves massive, undefended pockets of airspace behind them.
The logs show that exact exploit barely 2 minutes later. Eagles center Jack Jeffrey catches a pass deep in his own zone. He threads a razor-sharp feed through a tiny window in the neutral plane.
Slices right past two Tiger centers who were caught drifting too low.
Addie Lum receives it, slips completely behind the Tigers' defensive plane, and snaps a shot into the far corner. Tie game.
That is the Eagles' entire philosophy, validated in one single play. They absorb the initial kinetic blow, scan for the spatial gap the Tigers created by overcommitting, and they strike.
The play-by-play from there reads like a battlefield report. The pace escalates into pure soaring chaos. You have players streaking between the vertical layers, the mana orb ricocheting off the transparent dome barriers at high velocity.
And the impact data in the logs is staggering. Chad Griffith, the Tigers' enforcer, and Natalie Matthews for the Eagles are trading these punishing defensive checks.
Reading the post-game quotes on that specific matchup is hilarious, actually. Griffith genuinely thought he was intimidating her.
Yeah, he said he was trying to, quote, set the physical tone.
But if you look at the player tracking data, Matthews was initiating just as much contact. She wasn't just taking hits, she was intentionally baiting Griffith out of his defensive posture.
She played him like a fiddle.
The Tigers were clearly trying to physically batter the Eagles into slowing down their transition game.
But the Eagles' stamina metrics remain incredibly stable. They just refuse to let off the gas.
And their persistence pays off right at the buzzer of period 1. The logs show the Tigers pressing hard in the offensive zone. Mac Blackwood intercepts a pass right at the blue line.
Which, to be clear to you listening, means he caught it perfectly on the vertical plane separating the zones.
Right. He feeds the orb across the neutral plane to Wesley Leclerc, who hammers a drive shot into the net. The period ends 2-1 Golden Eagles.
It is a textbook execution of asymmetric counterattack.
Yeah.
The Eagles took the Tigers' best punch, absorbed the Crimson collapse, and somehow walked into the locker room with the lead.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the Tigers aren't a team that just rolls over. In period 2, the tides turn completely. Looking at the strategy adjustments, the Tigers stop trying to outmuscle the Eagles in open airspace.
Yeah, they changed tactics.
They decide to suffocate them with pure possession.
This is where Commander Liz Hadbucks takes over the game. The tracking data on her for the second period is mesmerizing. She figures out that the Eagles' minimal defensive structure will eventually fracture if you force them to chase the orb long enough.
How does she actually execute that in the dome, though? The logs just show a massive spike in her possession time.
She manipulates the neutral plane's gravity well.
Oh, wow.
Hadbucks spends the entire second period drifting just millimeters below the boundary of the upper layer. By hovering right on that threshold, she forces the Eagles' defenders to constantly fight the gravitational pull to reach her.
That's exhausting.
It depletes their mana boost charge and their physical stamina. She essentially turns the dome's magic into a sixth defender.
The result is an absolute offensive clinic. We see them trading heavy blows in the play-by-play. Hadbuck spots Fallon circling high above the offensive zone. She fires a pinpoint aerial pass upward. Fallon dives toward the goal ring and, mid-flight, redirects the orb right into the net. Tie game 2-2.
The Eagles try to answer right back. The logs show Addie Lum darting through the neutral plane, weaving past two Tigers defenders, and slipping a gorgeous drop pass to Matt Blackwood, who buries it. 3-2 Eagles.
But the Tigers just keep swarming. Ty Clyde gets a quick feed from Distansk and blasts the snapshot right through heavy traffic. 3-3. The shot volume from the Tigers in this 10-minute stretch is just overwhelming.
This is where that structural mismatch we talked about earlier really rears its head. The Tigers' three-center swarm is repeatedly collapsing on the Eagles' single dedicated defender.
Yeah, if you look at the exhaustion metrics for the Eagles' backline, they are deep in the red.
They simply do not have the bodies in their own zone to clear rebounds out of the lower layer.
And the final play of period 2 proves your point exactly. The logs describe a frantic scramble near the Guardian Circle, bodies everywhere, the orb bouncing wildly off the lower dome boundary. And who is sitting perfectly positioned in the neutral plane to clean up the garbage?
Liz Hadbucks.
Liz Hadbucks. She buries the rebound, the buzzer sounds, and the Tigers have retaken the lead 4-3.
From a purely analytical standpoint, the end of period 2 looks like the end of the game. The Tigers dictated the entire tempo. They drag the Eagles into a grinding, sustained possession battle.
Which is the one thing the Eagles' strategy documents say to avoid at all costs, which sets the stage for Period 3. This becomes an ultimate battle of endurance. The logs note that the atmosphere in the arena shifts. The Tigers aren't sitting back in a defensive shell. They are aggressively hunting for the kill.
They want that insurance goal to bury the Eagles for good.
When your defensive structure is failing and your transition game is grounded by exhaustion, your Guardian has to be flawless. And Blake Anderson puts on a performance in this third period that defies statistical probability.
We have to talk about the save of the night.
Oh, absolutely. It happens midway through the third. The Tigers are sustaining incredible pressure. Autumn Fallon, who has been lethal all night, finds a pocket of space in the upper layer. She launches another devastating spike shot.
The telemetry shows a clean strike, a perfect downward trajectory toward the goal ring.
But Anderson reads the angle before the orb even leaves Fallon's monastic.
It's incredible anticipation.
The play-by-play describes Anderson exploding upward from the Guardian circle. They launch into the air, fighting the downward gravity pull of the upper layer with a spectacular diving stick block that knocks the orb completely off its axis.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, a save like that does more than just keep a point off the board. It violently shifts the psychological momentum of the game.
You can feel it in the logs.
If you look at the raw data, the Tigers were averaging a shot on goal every 45 seconds before that save. For the next 4 minutes after that block, they don't register a single shot.
That save essentially built a seawall against the Crimson collapse. It completely revitalizes the Eagles. Barely 2 minutes later, Tyler Ward collects a loose orb in the neutral plane,
The tracking data shows it accelerating to maximum speed.
blowing past the Tigers' exhausted defenders who are suddenly a step slow. He fires a wicked drive shot that slips right past Grazzo's left shoulder. Tie game, 4-4.
The Tigers' high-pressure system finally broke under its own weight.
The clock ticks down, the arena is deafening, and regulation ends deadlocked. We head to sudden death overtime.
Overtime in Manaball completely alters the tactical landscape. Sustained pressure becomes a liability because a single turnover ends the game.
Right, it's a pure race to manufacture one clean look.
Both teams play the opening minutes cautiously. The logs show a lot of lateral passing in the neutral plane. Everyone is terrified of making the fatal mistake.
And then, a sudden break in the geometry of the game.
Jack Jeffrey anticipates a passing lane before it even opens.
The play-by-play captures it perfectly. A Tigers defender tries a routine horizontal clear. Jeffrey intercepts it right at center dome. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't look for a safe possession pass. He immediately launches a high-velocity thread pass straight up into what looks like wide-open empty airspace.
Because he isn't passing to a player. He is passing to a coordinate. He knows exactly where his striker's trajectory is taking her.
Addie Lum is already climbing. She accelerates violently into the upper layer, meeting the orb perfectly at the apex of its arc. She catches it, pivots in midair, and dives toward the goal ring.
The telemetry data on this final shot is incredible.
She strikes the orb cleanly on her descent, adding her own kinetic energy to the gravity pull. The shot screams past Grazzo's outstretched stick. Goal. The Golden Eagles win 5-4 in a stunning, sudden death upset.
It is a phenomenal, breathless finish. And when you pull back and look at the final stat lines, the narrative of the game crystallizes. Addie Lum was undeniably the offensive superstar.
Absolutely.
She finishes with 2 goals and an assist, including that dramatic overtime winner. Her spatial awareness in the transition game just dismantled the Tiger structure.
But looking at the defensive metrics, the real story is in the Guardian circle.
Yeah, Lum will get the headlines, but Guardian Blake Anderson is the mathematical MVP of this matchup. Surviving the Tigers' crimson collapse is no small feat. Anderson faced 29 shots from the most dangerous offense in the league. They made 25 saves.
And .862 save percentage against a 3-center barrage.
Exactly. For context, most Guardians consider a .750 save percentage against the Tigers to be a massive success, simply because of the sheer volume of high-danger chances that formation generates.
Wow.
Without Anderson manipulating their own airspace perfectly in the third period, Lum never gets the opportunity to walk it off in overtime.
So what does this all mean? We have dug through the strategy documents, we've mapped out the telemetry, and we've relived the key plays. What is the ultimate takeaway from this forensic breakdown?
The data points to a very clear lesson about the true nature of adaptability. We naturally tend to think that the superior strategy is simply applying overwhelming force.
Right.
The Crimson Tigers had the dominant structure, the aggressive possession metrics, and the shot volume. But the Eagles proved that elite strategy isn't just about flawlessly executing your own plan. It is about recognizing the mathematical gaps your opponent creates when they execute theirs.
The Tigers surrendered the airspace, and the Eagles just moved into the vacancy.
Precisely. The Eagles didn't try to beat the Tigers in the neutral plane. They used their unique strengths, speed, improvisation, and verticality to specifically exploit the aggressive overcommitment of the Tigers system.
They bent under the pressure of the second period, but they didn't break.
And they waited for the geometry of the game to favor them.
It's a brilliant tactical lesson, and it really makes you reconsider how we approach complex systems. This raises an important question. Think about the 3D spatial awareness required to play the guardian position in Manaball.
It's mind-boggling.
Imagine trying to defend a defined space when the threats aren't just approaching on an X and Y axis. They are diving down from the upper layer. They're drifting up from the lower layer. The cognitive processing required to track threats in a magical dome is staggering.
You have to completely untether your brain from linear horizontal thinking.
And that is the thought I want to leave you with today. In your own life, when you are staring down a complex, multi-directional challenge, whether you are mapping out a massive project at work, navigating a tricky negotiation, or just trying to manage a chaotic week, are you only tracking the problem standing directly in front of you?
Are you stuck fighting a grinding battle on the neutral plane?
Or are you remembering to untether your thinking, look up, and anticipate the dive shots before they hit? It is definitely something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the logs. We will catch you next time.